When alone, this Apache widow revealed an amazing secret. Her hands unexpectedly betrayed her. Mary sat on the floor of her dim bedroom, surrounded by the chaotic remnants of a life she had once cherished. The laughter of her children echoed from the other room, but it felt like distant music. Today, she had opened an old chest, hoping to find something, anything, that might reignite a small spark of hope. Instead, a dusty family diary lay nestled within, its pages crumbling and fragile, yet rich with stories of her ancestors' artistry. As she flipped through the faded pages, her heart ached with both pride and sorrow. Could she, an Apache widow in a town that barely acknowledged her existence, ever hope to carry their legacy forward? She felt the weight of expectations, not just from her community, but from herself. Her weaving was supposed to honor her late husband, provide for her children, and express a heritage that thrived on creativity. Yet the locals often dismissed her art, trapped in stereotypes that made her feel invisible. As she sat there, nestled in nostalgia and despair, her mind raced. Doubt invaded her resolve. What if she failed? What if her hands, betraying her in their frailty, could no longer create the intricate designs her ancestors had woven? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she began to weave again, her fingers moved almost unconsciously, but it felt different. Each thread she pulled sang with an urgency she hadn't felt before. Patterns emerged, stories were whispered into existence. Still, the shadows of her fears loomed large. What if the gallery owner, known for her sharp criticism, dismissed her work, scoffing at her attempts to blend heritage with modernity? The memory of that woman's condescending smile haunted Mary, tightening the knot of anxiety in her chest. The anticipation of the art show grew heavier on her shoulders, mingling with her love for the craft and the suffocating pressure of societal judgment. Whatever joy she found in weaving was eclipsed by the thought of being scrutinized, reduced to nothing more than a stereotype in their eyes. This was not just about art, it was about her children's future, a chance to rise above the pain that had engulfed her since her husband's passing. The quiet hum of her home became a battleground, her heart racing as she fought back despair that threatened to drown her again. As she looked at her completed pieces lined against the wall, the beauty of it all felt like a cruel joke. The folk who knew her name wouldn't see the stories woven into the fabric. They would only see what they wanted, a widow trying to claim space she didn't belong in. Now standing before her creations, Mary felt indecision consume her. Could her hands capture the essence of her lineage? Could they stake her claim? With every fiber she wove, the question burned uncomfortably. Could she, an Apache widow, truly change the narrative of her life and carve a place for herself in a world poised to dismiss her? In that uncertainty, she hesitated, gripped by the passionate tug between hope and the fear of rejection, teetering on the edge of transformation, but burdened by the stakes that weighed down her heart like stones. The following morning, Mary awoke with the sun casting tentative rays through her window. As the light illuminated her dim room, it nudged away some of the gloom that had soaked in overnight. The fabric remnants from her weaving session lay strewn about, a tapestry of unfinished ideas and unresolved fear. Today she resolved would be different. She would step into the sunlight, both literally and metaphorically. After sending her children off to school, she stood at her loom, looking at her hands, fingers delicately poised to begin. She took a deep breath. The air held promise, a promise of discovery. Her first thread met the loom with a softness that surprised her. It was almost as if the fibers breathed life into her intentions, whispered support from the very spirits of her ancestors that she longed to honor. She recalled her grandmother, a master weaver whose hands had danced through intricate patterns with an effortless grace. What would she say? Would she urge Mary to push through the fear, to reclaim her narrative through love and creation? Determined to capture that spirit, Mary began establishing a rhythm. The thrum of the loom felt like a heartbeat, her heartbeat, each swish and pull merging rhythm with purpose. But midway through, doubt flared again like a sudden flame, threatening to consume her vision. Was she truly honoring her lineage? Or was she just an imposter stitching together threads, fragile, fleeting? The gallery owner's skepticism loomed at the edge of her mind like a storm cloud, ready to rain on her parade. Instead of letting it paralyze her, however, it ignited a fire inside. She had known rejection, but deeper still was the desire to defy it, to mold her discomfort into something powerful. Seized by inspiration, she decided to incorporate elements from her family's heritage into her design, but with a contemporary twist. Each motif she created told a story, a resurgence of pride, an embrace of her identity, and the refusal to remain invisible. This weaving was not merely about aesthetics, it was about voice and visibility, a conduit for the pain and joy that resonated through her lineage. The day slipped away as hours merged into a blur of creation. With each pattern she felt herself shift, evolve. She was no longer just a widow, but a vessel of resilience, pushing against the tides of criticism and expectation. Her hands moved with newfound strength, executing intricate designs that danced between traditional symbols and modern interpretation with a fluidity she had never known before. Finally, as dusk cloaked her surroundings, Mary stepped back to survey her work. The burden of anxiety didn't vanish entirely, but it was joined by something new. Excitement, sheer exhilaration at the prospect of what lay ahead. She envisioned the day when her pieces would hang not just on a wall, but in the hearts of those who saw them, a warm invitation into her world. But just as determination settled in, the echo of doubt returned. The thought of revealing her work to the gallery, the disinterested glances, the dismissive words, sent a tremor through her heart. Was she ready to face that scrutiny? Did her newfound resolve hold water against the tide of societal skepticism? As she stood there, contemplating the reality that awaited her, the urgency to prepare for the impending confrontation surged within her chest. There were pieces of herself still tangled in hesitation, but the time was drawing near. She needed to confront, not just the gallery owner but the very fabric of her fears. What awaited her on the other side of that challenge was a question that lingered in the air, heavy and unshakable. Would she find the validation she craved, or would she be met with the cold reproach she so feared? Each answer pulled at the threads of her resolve, inviting her to confront the reality she could either embrace or evade. The stage was set. Her heartbeat quickened at the thought of what would come next. Determined to silence the rising chorus of doubt in her mind, Mary awoke the next day with a renewed fervor. No longer did she want her fears to dictate her narrative. She would be the author of her own story. She approached her loom with purposeful intent, each thread she wove feeling like a step towards self-assertion. Each color she chose danced with defiance, a swirl of stories waiting to be told. She couldn't escape the nerves curling in her stomach, but instead of allowing them to paralyze her, Mary transformed them into a drive. This was not simply a motif she was creating, it was a declaration of her identity and resilience. She had spent too long shrinking into the shadows of societal expectations. Now she was embracing the brightness of her personal truth, blending vibrant hues with intricate patterns as if to shout, "Here I am." Today, she decided to connect her weaving to specific memories of her grandmother's teachings, weaving in techniques that had been lost over the years. As she let the memories guide her hands, she felt a connection form, threads of the past intertwined with her present. On a deeper level, this practice stirred something within her, a quiet realization of her own capabilities. Mary paused, considering the gallery once again. What if this time she presented something more than just fabric? What if she presented herself, authentic and unyielding? The idea felt tantalizing, yet it also frightened her. Would she be critiqued as merely a widow playing at artistry? Just the thought sent shivers of doubt through her spine. Caught up in her contemplation, she wove a symbol of courage into her design, an unfinished phoenix rising from the ashes. It captured everything she had wanted to express, the pain of loss, the frustration of rejection, and most importantly, the determination to rise anew. As she worked, she could feel the stitches resonating with her story, beating out a rhythm of hope and authenticity. But moments of inspiration were volatile. Just as she was lost in her crafting, familiar apprehension crept back in. What if this was all an illusion? What if she was just a vessel, but lacking the substance to carry her legacy? Fragments of self-doubt threatened to unravel the very tapestry she was constructing. What would her family, her children, her late husband, think if she failed? The loom buzzed quietly around her, the rhythmic sound echoing her heartbeat. Mary took a deep breath, steeling her resolve. She realized that ultimately, the value of her work could not lie solely in external validation. The craft wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about the expression of her journey, her voice, a testimony to her existence. With this understanding, she set her intentions clear. This was more than a way to fill her time. It was a path to rediscovering herself. Confidence would not be given to her in an artist's critique, but discovered in the act of creation itself. As she stepped back to admire her work, there was a newfound sense of pride in her chest. The intricate designs weren't merely patterns, they were narratives fulfilled. But the looming deadline for her gallery submission weighed heavily on her mind, transforming her exhilaration into anxiety once again. Could she truly find the courage to present herself and her vision to the world? The question clung to her, an anchor and a weight. Realization kicked in. Her vulnerability could either destroy her or forge her identity anew. That night's thoughts danced dangerously close to finality. The next morning would bring clarity. Decisions would have to be made. Would she be able to not only confront the gallery, but tap into the very essence of her artistry without fear? Time was running out, and her heart raced at the thought of coming face to face with the ultimate validation of her work. The stage was set, but the next act awaited the daring choice she had to embrace, and the answers loomed larger than ever. Mary awoke to a day drenched in kaleidoscopic hues, her loom beckoning with a sense of urgency. As the sunlight streamed through her window, illuminating the fibers laid before her, the colorful threads stirred a new vigor within her. Today was different. It wasn't merely about creating art, but reclaiming her identity. She was ready to embrace whatever feelings the process invoked, surrendering to the tactile connection she had longed for. With determination surging in her chest, she approached her loom, recalling her grandmother's lessons on trusting intuition. Each strand was a reminder that she was not just weaving, she was sculpting her renaissance. She began cautiously, threading each color with a sense of purpose. A cascade of reds and golds symbolized the burning embers of her spirit reawakening. Each weave served to focus her restless mind, driving her deeper into this meditative state. Midway through her design, a surge of ambition collided with apprehension. How could she convey her most profound emotions, those hidden depths she had kept buried? The magnificent phoenix was still an unfinished masterpiece, but what lay beneath its surface? Inspiration flickered within her, but self-doubt lounged nearby, ready to pounce at any moment. Perhaps the mere act of creation might not be sufficient. The gallery awaited with open doors, but would they really accept her story? With a deep breath, Mary chose to embrace vulnerability, deciding her work would mirror the very essence of her journey. Would others see the triumph in her pain? Was there strength to be found in exposing her scars? She allowed these questions to float through her mind, noticing how they mingled with excitement. Her memories crept back, illuminating moments spent with her grandmother, the woman who instilled in her the virtues of authenticity. She felt her grandmother's spirit, an echo guiding her hands toward manifestation, a decision solidified within her. This would not just be a finished tapestry, it would symbolize her multifaceted existence, her grief, rebirth, and everything in between. She began to embroider small motifs of self-discovery alongside the phoenix. An open book, symbolizing her relationship with knowledge, a compass, representing her direction in life, and a fragile flower, embodying her strength despite adversity. Each edition brought layers to her artwork, deepening the connections formed between past and present. And yet, as her fingers worked with growing agility, an array of doubts buzzed persistently at the back of her mind. What if this portrayal, so raw, so real, invited judgment instead of acceptance? What if her late husband's friends and family viewed her as trivializing his memory? A sudden chill surged through her, threatening to unravel the fabric of her focus. Would this endeavor merely excavate her vulnerabilities rather than reinforce her resilience? She paused, feeling the loom quiver under her fingertips. The question was not merely about what others would think, it was about who she could become through this process. If she wove her truth into her art, there was a chance her vulnerability could transcend judgment, evolving into empowerment. As the hours faded, the gallery's looming submission deadline pulsed like an unyielding heartbeat in her mind. No more delays, no next time. This was her moment. The complex tapestry was almost complete, whispering secrets and stories of her entwined life. She could feel an electric charge in the air, thrumming with the possibilities of recognition, the resolve to share her narrative. The stakes were higher than she'd anticipated, each color growing bolder, each stitch becoming a declaration. But what would happen when she presented it? The thought ignited an electric blend of dread and exhilaration. Would her hands, so skilled in crafting beauty, reveal hidden truths? The answer hung on the horizon. As she approached the final stages of completion, Mary realized the confrontation with her own fears was inevitable. Would she dare to step into the light, fiercely showcasing her essence? Or would the shadows of doubt continue to haunt her? With one last thread in her hand, she scanned the yawning emptiness of her canvas, a stage waiting to be filled. The moment of truth awaited, and she could feel the gravity of her choice pressing down upon her. Could she truly let her art, her heart, speak for itself? Would she break free from the chains of her past, or would she succumb to them once more? The next turn loomed before her, an uncertain twist awaited, and she stood, hands trembling yet resolute, at the precipice of possibility. The loom's pulsing rhythm echoed the turmoil brewing within Mary. As she neared the final moments of creation, the threads she had so meticulously woven now felt heavy with her history. Each vibrant hue bore witness to her journey through grief, loss, and courage. Yet a new emotion began to stir, fear. What if she was never truly prepared to present this testament of her resilience? The thought slithered into her mind, wrapping itself around her resolve. Instead of retreating, she took a step back and studied her work. The phoenix soared, but it was her own reflection mirrored in those fiery wings that demanded her attention. Would the depth of her struggle resonate with an audience? Or would they merely see the facade of a woman trying to rekindle a lost life? Her hands trembled as they hovered over the last remaining threads. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, attempting to anchor herself in the storm brewing around her. More than the fear of judgment, she feared the confrontation with her deepest scars. Would opening this vulnerable part of herself lead to liberation, or would it expose her to wounds that had yet to heal? Mary recalled her grandmother's voice, softly guiding her through her own struggles. Art is an unveiling, my dear, as much as a sharing. She knew that this tapestry was not merely for the gallery, but for herself. It was a cathartic resurrection, a revelation of her journey that she could no longer hide from. Each motif she had added bore significance, entwined within the narrative of her pain and fortitude. As the last strand slipped through her fingers, Mary felt an unexpected surge of clarity. It was all so much more than a display for approval. This was her truth wrapped in fabric, her identity tethered to every stitch. Yet the looming deadline anchored heavy on her shoulders. The invitation to the gallery, extended weeks ago, now felt like an impending judgment rather than an opportunity. Would she dare to stand before the critical eyes and bear the intricacies of her existence? It was a question that had seemed trivial before, but now it resonated profoundly. Would she be strong enough to step out from behind the shadows of doubt? With one final breath, she reached for her art, needing to channel the energy pulsing from the loom. She would not allow her tales of heartbreak to be overshadowed by the fear of judgment. It was a declaration simmering inside her, something that required urgency. No longer would she whisper her truth, she would shout it through her art. Smoothing the last threads, Mary contemplated her next steps. It was more than just wrapping the tapestry now. It was about embracing everything it represented. Her heartbeat quickened as she envisioned her arrival at the gallery, the moment when she would unveil herself to those gathered. Each pair of eyes would hold the possibility of acceptance and understanding, but also the threat of doubt. As she prepared to step outside her door, an exhilarating yet terrifying thought seized her. Perhaps she wasn't just revealing her art. She was shedding the weight of a past she had carried for far too long. The phoenix wasn't merely an image. It was a promise to rise from embers, to grow from experiences, solidified with each fiber of her tapestry. Yet, as she closed the door behind her, she couldn't shake a creeping doubt that persisted. Could her art hold enough power to change hearts and minds? Would the vulnerability she displayed invite empathy or drive the walls higher? Mary paused on the threshold, knowing she was on the brink of something monumental. She felt the tension of the moment stretch like the threads of her loom. taut and vulnerable, ready to break or become something extraordinary. Before stepping into the world that awaited her, she closed her eyes and whispered a promise to herself. No more hiding. But could she trust that promise in the face of real exposure? With a determined stride, she moved forward, the gallery's lights beckoning, but the voices of her doubts echoed, reminding her just how high the stakes were. The confrontation was imminent, and she felt the air crackle with the electricity of possibility. The gallery stood before her like a grand cathedral, each light a beacon illuminated by the softest hues of hope and fear. As Mary pushed through the glass entrance, a chilling swirl of anticipation snaked down her spine. She had pictured this moment countless times, yet now, surrounded by the murmur of scattered conversations and the drone of footsteps, it felt surreal. Every step toward the exhibit felt heavy with the weight of unspoken words, stories encoded in the vibrant threads of her tapestry. Mary navigated through the space, pausing to take in the other artworks adorning the walls. Each piece was a narrative of its own, expressions of joy, anguish, love, and defiance. Yet even as she absorbed their brilliance, an insidious voice whispered in her ear. Her work could never belong in such exalted company. Ironically, it was amid these displays that she felt the most undeterred by doubt, like a lone flower striving to blossom in a garden of expertly curated blooms. Then she spotted her tapestry. It hung at the far corner like an incandescent jewel amidst muted colors, its fiery phoenix a stunning contrast against the pale canvas of its surroundings. The deep reds and golds pulsated with a life of their own, beckoning viewers to step closer. As she drew near, she could hear hushed tones discussing its complexity and depth, but instead of drawing strength from their intrigue, her heart hammered with anxiety. What if the deeper meaning she had woven went unnoticed? What if the audience, crowded and scrutinizing, reduced her experiences to mere aesthetics? Each thought echoed through her mind, unraveling her resolve. She took a deep breath, her fingers grazing the edge of the tapestry. The fabric felt alive beneath her touch, a structure born of vulnerability, strength, and rebirth. As she faced her reflection in its glossy surface, the doubts resurfaced. Worse, they resurfaced articulated through the spectator's eyes. Was she truly ready to expose who she was? Survival instincts clawed within as she wrestled with the imminent unveiling of not just her artwork, but of herself. She could almost hear her grandmother's voice guiding her again, urging her to remember the power of being honest. Just as she fortified her mental barricade against self-judgment, a couple approached. Their eyes glimmered as they locked on her tapestry, awe mingling with curiosity. They traced the intricate stitches with their fingers, and Mary caught the faint, hopeful conversation between them. This must mean a lot to the artist, one noted reverently. In that moment, something shifted inside of her. Perhaps it wasn't about how the audience interpreted her experience, but rather how her honesty could connect them to their own sorrows and joys. Maybe by sharing, she was encouraging them to confront their own truths. The realization struck like lightning, illuminating an expansive sky. She wasn't alone in this fear. She was inviting others into her sanctuary of resilience. However, as the couple moved away, Mary felt her heart drop. There it was again, shame creeping back alongside the feelings of exhilaration. With every laughter, excited whisper, and the reports of enchanting critiques, she contemplated whether it truly mattered. Could the daring act of vulnerability encapsulated in her art make any difference in a world that often celebrated surface over substance? Just then, a figure half-turned in her direction, a familiar one with a steely demeanor, Alex, the curator, and a haunting ghost from her past. Their eyes locked for a heartbeat, and time seemed to stall. Mary felt a rush of unresolved feelings surfacing, both dread and a strange sense of challenge. Would he be a reminder of all that she had fled from, or could he represent the strength she had discovered? She stood poised at the crossroads, the gallery buzzing around her, a world ready to see her truth. But just as she was about to take a step forward, she felt the rapid pulse of her own hesitations. This encounter promised to peel back layers she thought she had outgrown. The moment of truth had arrived, and she couldn't ignore the implications of facing him, the echoes of their shared past resonating like an unfinished symphony within her. Could this unexpected meeting hold the key to understanding her own evolution? As Alex's presence loomed closer, a question crackled between them. Was this confrontation meant to enlighten her, or expose her wounds anew? Mary felt the air around her thicken as Alex approached, a magnetic pull drawing her into the depths of a once familiar turmoil. What had been long buried beneath layers of self-protection and growth now stirred like sleeping giants awakened by a modern-day echo. As his gaze zeroed in on her tapestry, she gleaned the mixture of surprise and intrigue that washed over him, her confidence fraying at the edges. "Mary," he said, his voice steady but laced with an undercurrent she couldn't quite decipher. "I didn't expect to see you here. Your work, it's stunning." "Thanks, Alex," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. His presence felt overwhelming yet oddly comforting, mirroring a connection she had once valued deeply. The distance they had maintained since parting years ago felt like a chasm now, with her art as the only bridge. "What inspired this piece?" he asked, taking a step closer, eyes scrutinizing the vibrant threads. The question was borderline innocent, yet Mary sensed an interrogation, probing her depths beneath the surface of creativity. She hesitated. Should she unveil the raw honesty woven into the fabric, or shield her heart yet again? The familiar instinct to conceal bubbled just beneath the surface. Instead, she drew a deep breath, reflecting on her grandmother's wise words. "It represents resilience, transforming scars into strength, rising from the ashes," she replied, allowing a sliver of her truth to bleed into the air. Alex nodded, his brow furrowing as if grappling with emotions he had long since suppressed. "It's powerful, but—" He paused, uncertainty flickering across his features. "Is it really where you find your strength? Or are you still searching?" It felt like a punch to her gut. His perceptiveness gnawed at her foundation. Was she still searching? The question clawed at her bravado, twisting like a knife through layers of determination. In that instant, the gallery dissolved into a haze, reducing everything else to a blur, leaving only her and Alex locked in a moment fraught with unvoiced history. "Maybe I'm both," she admitted, a flicker of defiance igniting within her. The admission felt risky, an exposure of sorts, yet liberating. Each conversation with Alex had always been a dance between revealing and concealing, yet this raw honesty felt oddly exhilarating. "That's a start," he replied, his voice softening with an inviting warmth. "Admitting it is half the journey." Mary suddenly felt an unexpected wave of gratitude toward him. In a way, he was the mirror reflecting both the pain she had buried and the power she claimed. It was refreshing, yet frightening. This confrontation held a parallel of vulnerability, akin to what was encapsulated in her tapestry. The moment lingered, a thread taut between them, before a wave of onlookers surged, diluting the intimate space they shared. Mary's heart raced, glancing back to the tapestry, her mind racing anew. Was this encounter yet another layer to unfold? Or would she retreat to the comfort of her self-imposed solitude? "Hey, we should catch up sometime," Alex said, his tone shifting back to something casual, but the glint in his eyes revealed he felt the heaviness too. "I'd love to hear more about your journey, even the parts you're finding hard to share." His offer felt both inviting and perilous. The stakes were rising, exposing her vulnerabilities while teasing the thrill of freedom. Would confronting the past alongside Alex be the fuel that ignited her creative fire, or would it fracture the hard-won resilience she was beginning to embrace? "Maybe," she replied cautiously, weighing her own readiness against the desire for connection. As he moved to join another group, Mary felt a commotion stirring within her, an awareness that the healed and the broken lived within her, intricately intertwined just as the threads of her tapestry. This was more than an unveiling of art. It was the unveiling of herself, and the essence of who she was meant to become hung in the balance. That evening, as the gallery buzzed with discussion and laughter, evocative pieces sharing their stories, Mary sensed that her moment of truth had just begun. Could she summon the courage to peel back those layers further? The reflective eyes of the audience drifted her way once more, but the mingled confidence and trepidation within her suddenly felt alive. She wasn't simply an artist anymore. She was the narration of her own rebirth, poised at the edge of transformation. And as she stood there, heart pounding with the thrill of newfound possibilities, a chilling realization swept through her. Everything rested on her next move. Could she allow herself to be seen? The question hung heavy in the air, an impending decision only she could make. Would she step into the spotlight of her own narrative, or retreat to the shadows of doubt once more? Mary left the gallery that evening feeling as if she had emerged from a cocoon. The world outside seemed sharper in contrast to the dim lighting of the gallery, yet the pulse of her heart echoed the doubt she had tried to cast aside. Could she really rebuild those connections she had severed, particularly with Alex? Or would she retreat into her safety zone? As the cool air washed over her, the forgotten fears began to rise, inching their way back into her consciousness. In her studio, she stood before a blank canvas, the untouched surface a stark reminder that creativity could flourish from discomfort. She had always found solace in the act of creation, a refuge from the turbulence of her own thoughts. But tonight, the whispers of her insecurities filled the space like an uninvited guest. What if she let Alex in, only to have him see the fractures she believed she had reconciled? What if he too became a reflection of her unresolved past? Grabbing her palette, Mary mixed vibrant colors as she recalled Alex's question. Is it really where you find your strength? Or are you still searching? His probing words lingered, forcing her to acknowledge the raw edges of her self-discovery. What was it that she truly sought? Was her art merely a manifestation of survival, or was it a pathway to something greater? She squeezed the paint tubes, each squirt a cathartic release of pent-up emotions. The canvas seemed to hum, beckoning her to articulate the chaos brewing within. As she began to brush the colors in sweeping strokes, she embraced the message she wanted to convey. Vulnerability could coexist with strength, and her art could reflect that duality. Each brushstroke was a revelation, an act of defiance against the doubt that tried to choke her creativity. As the colors melded together, Mary could feel her steadfastness being challenged, yet invigorated. A figure began to emerge from the chaos, its contours revealing despair, yet imbued with a profound sense of hope. It danced between the lines of the past and present, whispering to her that healing often came with uncertainty. Hours passed, but time was lost in the fervor of her creation. Sweat beaded on her forehead, a tangible mark of effort and emotional investment. For the first time, the wall she had built around her heart began to crumble. It was more than just art. It was the unearthing of her true self, an assertion that she was not defined solely by her past. Suddenly, a thought pierced through the haze. What if sharing this newfound honesty with Alex meant risking everything? Could she truly let him watch as she created not just art, but a bridge into her soul? The decision began to crystallize. Perhaps she wouldn't need to broadcast all her vulnerabilities at once, but offering glimpses might be the catalyst for connecting with him again. The notion felt empowering. Each small vulnerability shared could build a deeper dialogue, fortifying not just her relationship with him, but also her relationship with herself. At dawn, she stepped back and surveyed the canvas. It was a long way from complete, yet it felt like a tipping point, a promise of what could emerge from the untamed chaos of her emotions. With a newfound determination, she decided to reach out to Alex, to suggest a coffee, or maybe even a studio visit. As she picked up her phone, a fresh wave of anxiety pulsed through her. Should she? Just then, an inner voice countered all her wavering thoughts. The moment for hesitation had passed. Mary needed to embrace the risk. Just as she reached for the contact, an unexpected tremor ran through her, as if the very essence of her art had infused itself into her body, urging her toward a new chapter. The fear washed away, replaced with an exhilarating sense of adventure. But the moment before she pressed send, a shadow of doubt crept back in. What if he didn't respond as she hoped? With her finger hovering over the screen, Mary breathed deeply, aware that every formulaic instinct to withdraw was ignited by the memories tethered to Alex. The weight of her decision hung in the air, leaving her poised between fear and possibility. Unbeknownst to her, a different kind of self-discovery awaited her beyond this choice, a deeper inquiry into what it truly meant to be seen. Would she shatter the barriers of her protective shell, or allow them to snuff out the brilliance she was beginning to embrace? As she steadied herself to confront that choice, her heart raced, leading her inexorably toward a new reckoning. The weight of the decision loomed like a dark cloud, heavy with the potential for either liberation or despair. Mary inhaled deeply, reveling momentarily in the clarity that arrived with the binding scent of oil paint. It grounded her, strengthening her resolve. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, but the words felt hollow, rehearsed. The very act of reaching out seemed laden with the possibility of rejection, and the thought snagged at the frayed edges of her courage. But what would happen if she didn't? Despair wormed its way into her thoughts, threatening to scatter everything she was just beginning to assemble. Would she continue to live a life dictated by her fears, forever a spectator in her own story? With a small tremor of determination, she pressed her thumb against the screen, sending the message with swift finality. It felt like an electric shock, a jolt that shot through her, igniting an unexpected rush of adrenaline. Instantly, however, second-guessing clawed at her insides. What if he dismissed her request? What if he didn't want to see her art? Or her? What if the bond she thought they'd shared was nothing more than a figment of her imagination? A fleeting moment snatched from the air of nostalgia. Abruptly she paced her studio, the walls now seeming to constrict while her thoughts raced. As she stepped back to the chaos of her unfinished canvas, the emerging figure within it appeared to watch her. Was it a reflection of her internal struggle? A manifestation of her own battle between vulnerability and protection? A reprimand for letting fear take the steering wheel yet again? Her emails pinged unanswered all around her, another shadow of doubt. She took a moment to meet her own gaze in the mirror hanging on the wall. The soft morning light captured the lines of worry etched on her face. They mirrored her artistic journey, a landscape of missteps and breakthroughs. Deciding that external validation was secondary to her pursuit of self-truth, she turned back towards her canvas. Maybe the risk was worth the potential for authenticity. With renewed fervor, she dove into her painting, allowing brush to canvas to guide her further into the deep recesses of her emotions. Each stroke became a confrontation with her past, a purple-tinged fight against her painted vistas of regret and self-doubt. Her hands acted almost of their own accord, interpreting her inner dialogue of fear and hope. Swirls of paint fused into faces, expressions caught in a dance of conflicted emotions. She worked feverishly, the once blank canvas now coming alive with tension and release. As the day progressed, a knock on the door interrupted her creative solitude. "Mary, it's Alex." His voice floated into her studio, igniting a flurry of butterflies in her stomach. She hesitated, her heart racing at the unexpected intrusion of her carefully curated bubble. The contrast between her inner turmoil and the reality standing at her threshold was stark. Could she allow him to tread into the sacred space of her artistic haven? Panic threatened to subsume her entire being. She could pretend to be invisible, cloistered within her art, or she could open the door to him, exposing both her œuvre and her raw self to scrutiny. Each alternative felt monumental. Shouldn't she be ready? She inhaled deeply, allowing the weight of her decision to sink in. This was her chance, to build the connection she thought was lost, or to retreat into the shadows where she felt most secure. In this moment, Mary had to confront not only Alex but also herself. As she turned the doorknob, she realized this encounter could redefine everything. The door opened, revealing Alex with an expectant look that brought her spiraling insecurities back to the forefront. "Hey," he smiled, but it felt like more than just a greeting. It was an invitation. Mary's heart slammed against her ribcage, her thoughts swirling. "Can I show you?" she whispered, the words barely escaping her lips. Alex nodded, eyes wide with interest, but in that glance, she could also see hesitation mirrored within him. Had she made the right choice? The air crackled with an unspoken challenge, a reckoning lying just beneath the surface of their interaction. The line between vulnerability and creativity blurred in this pivotal moment, leading Mary to wonder if true connection came at a cost she was not yet ready to pay. As she led him deeper into her studio, a gnawing thought persisted. The past never truly evaporates. It shadows you, often disguised as opportunity for growth. Would this bold step venture further into the light, or plunge her back into the depths of her fears? As Alex stepped into her studio, the array of unfinished artwork surrounded them like a gallery of her most private thoughts. An air of expectancy engulfed them. Mary's heart raced as she felt all eyes, past and present, upon her. Moments from her life, from laughter to loss, played across the walls as both encouragement and challenge. She was unearthing not just her artwork, but her own essence. "Wow, it's beautiful in here," he said, glancing at the vibrant paintings, a cacophony of emotions in every stroke. His response ignited a flicker of warmth within her. Yet the familiar tremors of self-doubt still loomed, urging her to hide behind her creations. Would he see her effort as mere fragments of an identity reconstructed through pain? Or could this truly be an opportunity to expose her raw truth? "What's this piece about?" Alex asked, pointing to her canvas, where a spectral figure began to take form, a blend of doubt and resilience painted in swirling colors. Mary inhaled, her pulse quickening, her throat tightened. "It's a journey. There's grief here, but also rebirth," she replied, feeling the weight of the words resonate within the silence of the studio. Perhaps, just perhaps, sharing her inner world with him was the next step on her path towards self-acceptance. As she spoke, she could see the shift in Alex's expression, the way his eyes softened as he stepped closer, but one lingering question haunted her. "And your art? Is it about healing or still searching?" The vulnerability of that inquiry echoed deeply within her, the reminder that healing was not an endpoint, but a continuous evolution. She paused, reflecting on her creative endeavors. "It's both," she said. "Creating this art has challenged me, made me realize that every piece tells a story. Each stroke, each hue is a conversation with myself, one that I've avoided for too long." He nodded, taking in her words, his gaze unwavering. This gentle acknowledgement of her truth invigorated her. She felt seen. "May I?" he asked, motioning toward a partially completed canvas still in its chaotic form. "Of course," Mary replied, hoping he would connect with the essence behind the colors. As he reached for the brush and added his mark, a smudged line of vibrant blue, something within her unfurled. In the union of their creative worlds, a synergy emerged that transcended the threshold of fear. The paint glided like the rapid beat of her heart, both of them entwined in the act of creation, a silent testament to the intricate dance of shared vulnerability. "You know, it's enough to just create," he said, as he set the brush down, glancing around her studio. "You don't need to share it all with the world if you aren't ready. This is for you. It's your story." His words resonated with a truth she had struggled to accept. The value in the act of creation lay in its wholeness, not just its completion or exhibition. "Maybe I needed to hear that," she admitted softly, a lightness blooming in her chest. They spoke of art, of dreams, of loss unbound, discovering a connection that breathed life into long-buried hope. In this intimate exchange, she unearthed a newfound confidence, a bond forged through honesty and authenticity. As twilight draped a golden hue over her studio, Mary finally saw her reflection in a different light. No longer that of a reclusive artist, but a passionate creator poised at the forefront of her narrative. She had not merely constructed a tapestry, she had woven her spirit into each thread, a testament of courage and transformation. It was clear that that evening had been much more than just about confronting fears. It was about embracing the complexity of her journey, a lesson in vulnerability. Alex's presence served as a catalyst for her transformation. She realized her past struggles were not chains, but familiar patterns she'd learned to navigate, driving her toward the light in the tapestry she had woven. As Alex prepared to leave, a renewed determination coursed through her veins. "Thank you for being here. I think I'm finally ready to share my work," she declared, a promise resonating within. "Whenever you're ready," he replied, his genuine smile radiating encouragement. And at that moment, Mary understood the significance of her art as a bridge between herself and the world, a connection formed through the act of creation, daring and authentic. Now prepared to unveil herself fully, she felt solid confidence take root within, firmly establishing her place as both an artist and a woman who had undeniably conquered her personal and professional conflicts. The journey would be ongoing, but she was no longer afraid of the tapestry of her life, the struggles, the triumphs, and everything in between. Mary was ready to embrace her identity and claim her space, one thread at a time. You need to subscribe now to witness more transformative journeys like Mary's. This is the moment to show your support for these powerful stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure that this inspiring content reaches more hearts. Comment your reactions and theories about Mary's incredible conclusion, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this message of hope and resilience.